The story behind Philip is a very straightforward one. Philip's grandfather applied for a job in the Danish press, and the job said, "Please apply, anybody who would like to become King of Greece." Anyway, his grandfather got the job. He was born of Germanic Danish blood, but he got the job of King of Greece. He was a reasonable king, but his son Andrew, Philip's father, was a different kettle of fish. Andrew wasn't much good at anything, and Andrew actually managed to get himself charged with treason in Greece for organising a very strange military campaign against the Turks, from which he fled the field, and 1.5 million Greeks lost their lives. He and his generals were charged with treason, and this is all going on at about the time that Elizabeth is going to marry his son. The British Foreign Secretary has to send out a gunboat to rescue the family in the dead of night and to bring Philip and the others across the water, but these people are stateless, they have been banished, they have surname, and they are certainly not royalty. Back in Britain, the marriage goes ahead, and George says, well, okay, there's not a lot I can do about it, but the wonderful thing is that you haven't got a surname, old chum, so at least your family can't nick the House of Windsor. Also, since you have no royal status and you are internationally banished and your father is under charge of treason, you cannot even be a prince in my country. So you will never be a prince in Britain. Prince Philip does not exist. He was given the title Duke of Edinburgh, and the only reason he couldn't be Prince of Scotland like we have a Prince of Wales is because the House of Stuart has always been Princes of Scotland. Duke of Edinburgh was the best they could give him. He then queued up after the war, and for 10 shillings he bought himself a British passport along with refugees from all over Europe. He still didn't have a surname. He took his uncle's name of Battenberg, which in the meantime had been changed to Mountbatten because they didn't sound quite so German at a dodgy time. So we now have Philip Mountbatten. Now then a very strange thing begins to happen, because what people forget was that Philip's uncle, Earl Mountbatten of Burma, was a very, very powerful person internationally. In naval terms, he was Lord of the Admiralty, powerful man. So he immediately comes forward, and we're now in 1947, and said, okay, this family has to become the House of Mountbatten. Not necessarily from the time that Philip and Elizabeth marry, or even from the time that she inherits the throne, but from the time that their first son or offspring inherits, this will be the House of Mountbatten. Now this was actually a problem for Parliament and for everybody else. The problem was that all of the heraldic colleges, all of the colleges of arms in Britain, be it in Scotland, England or wherever, agreed with Earl Mountbatten and said, well, we don't actually like you or the idea very much, but yes, legally you are correct. Well, anyway, the battle went on and the battle went on. Winston Churchill sort of saved the day, and there was a bit of paying off going on, and the thing went very quiet, and Earl Mountbatten knew that it wasn't going to matter at all anyway until Charles, the eldest son or whoever, became king, which might be soon or it might not be soon. In fact, he might not be king for a long time, so the first time he actually has to begin to make any noise about it is when Charles marries and produces an heir. So we're now moving towards the Diana period. Earl Mountbatten is still on the scene. Earl Mountbatten is waiting to turn this into a coup and to get it back to being the House of Mountbatten, which he feels sounds still a good deal nicer and more German than Windsor. So we come to 1979, by which time plans are already afoot for Charles to marry Diana. Although we in the public field didn't hear about it at that time, and they didn't get married until 81, the plans were afoot in 79, at which time Earl Mountbatten of Burma, Debrett's, Burke's Peerage and all the colleges rose up again and said, hey guys, House of Mountbatten on the way, because these people will have a son. Well, the argument prevailed and the argument raged, and legally everybody knew that Earl Mountbatten of Burma was correct. Charles had been strategically married into the Spencer line to clean up the blood. They were suffering from all sorts of problems, impotency, haemophilia, all the things that had happened because of too much very close interbreeding within the family. But Diana's job was simply to produce an heir. However, Mountbatten saw what had happened was a door had been opened and the House of Mountbatten was now on the horizon. Wrong. He was very strangely blown up in his boat, and that was the end of him. And for a lot of years they blamed the IRA. And nobody could actually quite understand why the IRA should want to blow up Mountbatten. You know, there's plenty of politicians and people that would really have done it to. Nobody understood that, and they always said it wasn't us. In fact, nasty people as we may be, we terrorists of the IRA lunatic fringe, we would always tell you when we blew somebody up, otherwise there's no point in us doing it. You wouldn't know it was us. I mean, we would gain nothing. In fact, if we managed to do a job like that, we would be really proud that we've been that clever, and we'd certainly make sure that you knew, but actually, sorry, wasn't us. Well, in fact, it was only a very few years ago that the government finally announced that they knew it wasn't the IRA. Well, the only way they could know it wasn't the IRA is to actually know who it was, and of course they knew who it was right from the start. And from that moment, scenes of old-time history began to come to people's minds, and you could see that this element of politics, this element of, if they don't go quietly, if they don't agree with our dogmas and our arguments, we'll make jolly sure that they're not around for too long, and they won't get in our way for any longer than we can help. So from that moment, you could almost predict, and this is from 1980, that Diana would not have a very successful time.